affordable housing, and small business support. So our first question, ready? As we enter a new phase of the COVID-19 pandemic, our city's economic recovery has been at the forefront of everyone's mind. In your candidate info forum, you mentioned that ensuring support, relief, and marketing capacity for small businesses would be among your top priorities after taking office. If elected, which kind of legislative and budgetary measures would you push for to help small businesses?
Thank you. I know I only have 90 seconds, but very quickly, thank you to Marty and the team, and shout out to Yulene and to Amanda, just incredible personal heroes of mine. So we hear a lot about the recovery of small businesses. What a lot of folks are not talking enough about is the fact that folks are being forced to go back into the office, right? Work from return to work is a very real thing. So that means fewer of us are going to be patronizing the businesses in our own neighborhoods. And so they're going to take a hit that has already been disproportionate as a result of the pandemic. And in my district, half of our businesses are owned by immigrants. So when I say marketing capacity, I mean I'm going to explore innovative opportunities to develop a fund for businesses in my district to apply for and tap into to create and pay for marketing programs to promote their services. We need to have a district-wide effort that highlights the businesses in our community and that encourages people to shop and dine and to patronize locally.
Okay, so our next question. Transit affordability has been an issue for low-income and working-class New Yorkers for some time now. Although the MTA is under the jurisdiction of the state, how it's funded too often becomes the responsibility of the city. In fact, just 2 months ago, the city committed to investing $75 million into Fair Fares, a program that offers Metro cards at a 50% discount to low-income New Yorkers. But the city's efforts alone will not be enough. As an assembly member, what will you do to ensure that subway fares remain affordable for low-income and working-class New Yorkers?
Thank you for that question. We're going to need as many advocates on this subject as possible if the latest news out of Albany is any indication, that even though we hear a lot about how the recovery of our economy is going to be contingent upon the recovery of working families, we're doing everything in our power to make it much more difficult for them to actually recover. So certainly using the power of my bully pulpit, even to advocate for things that are not in my purview, right, as a state assembly member, or to advocate for things that would require collaborative, concerted effort with the city, something that I'm comfortable doing. When I was Deputy Commissioner of the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, I oversaw the country's largest immigrant-serving constituent services program, as well as the country's largest immigrant-serving intergovernmental affairs program. And so what that means is, I've worked with Eric Adams when he was Brooklyn Borough President, Catherine Garcia when she was Commissioner of Sanitation, Maya Wiley when she was council. I know what it means to bring opposing views, sometimes within the same party, sometimes across party lines, to the table to create consensus and to ensure that we are prioritizing the needs of our working families. So just broadly speaking, I'm going to be a fierce advocate. I'm running in one of the most prohibitive districts in the city as a single immigrant working mom. And so it's important to send someone like me to Albany to ensure that we're legislating with that lived experience in mind.
Perfect timing. Okay. Our third question. In your candidate info form, you mentioned that you stood alongside advocates to fight for increased investment in immigration legal services and expanded language access. If elected, how would you convert these grassroots efforts into tangible policy initiatives and legislation?
Thank you. Very big question, but I think simply put, I'm going to do what I've always done, which is just, come to the community first, right? Meet the community where they are, have a strong sense of what their needs are, what their unique cultural needs are, what their, essentially what they need on a community level that is, actually, let me pause. It's going to be super critical that, actually, forgive me, repeat the question one more time.
Sure.
It's been a day, y'all.
No,
it's been a day.
In your candidate info form, you mentioned that you stood alongside advocates to fight for increased investment in immigration legal services and expanded language access. If elected, how would you convert these grassroots efforts into tangible policy?
Thank you. So again, it's going to be community-centered. My district, as I mentioned, half of our businesses are immigrant-owned, 20% of the population is born in another country, 20% of the population speaks a language other than English. I'm going to use that extensive knowledge and experience of coalescing, right, and building movements with community-based organizations, with advocates, with impacted populations, to understand what their unique needs are, and you start from there, and then you legislate towards that. I think a lot of our issues at the state level, and certainly at the city level, and arguably at the federal level, is that there's such a top-down approach, and we've seen that that's been ineffective. I know how good government, I know when that government works well, and I know when it doesn't work well, and it works best when we start from the bottom up, right? Have a clear sense of what it is that's needed, and have a deep understanding of the various stakeholders in every corner of our city, right? And the various sectors in which they work, from social services to food insecurity, et cetera. And so leveraging those relationships, leveraging that intergovernmental know-how, and implementing those skills of being a culturally competent, constituent service delivery person, right? To meet people where they are and in a way that respects their unique cultural needs. Thank you.
So an audience member from Queens asks, what made you decide to run for office?
First of all, audience member from Queens, I've been told I have Queens energy, which is quite frankly the best thing anyone's ever said to me. So I'm not supposed to be here. I was born in Sudan. I was born in one of the poorest countries in the world. My parents and I emigrated to the US when I was 3 years old. They had 4 degrees between the two of them and were relegated to, quite proudly, right, they worked really hard, but positions in fast food and retail and in engineering operations. It's the typical American dream story. I became an American citizen when I was 15 in the year 2000. And ever since then, I've been on this journey of service to the country that adopted me, to the city that adopted me. New York has been my home for 12 years now, and I've been dutifully serving it as a public servant for the last 7. And then prior to that, I was in nonprofit service. So from the moment that I stepped foot in the city, I've been supporting New Yorkers in every corner of the borough. I've never groomed myself for public office. I was asked to run. When Dan Court announced his resignation at the end of last year, I had a number of community members reach out to me and ask me, would you run? And I said, absolutely not. And then it took a good week, and I was convinced. And I think it's enough of people who seek office to purely have their resume, right? We're going to continue to get people who are unethical, who operate in a way that is, opaque, and that don't take into consideration the needs of their constituents. And so I think sending someone like me to Albany, who is not motivated by a desire to elevate myself personally, but actually a desire to really help my community on a deep commitment to service is the right way. So my community asked me to do it, and that's why I'm doing it. Thank you. Thank you.
Your last question. You now have the opportunity to speak about a policy issue of your choice that the previous questions did not give you the chance to highlight. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Very quickly, I'm sure this is on the top of mind of a lot of people. I was disappointed to see that undocumented immigrants were left out of universal child care in the state budget. Disappointed to see that coverage for all, right? We spent nightly for months at 7 p.m. Clapping for our essential workers with whom I worked, and it was on behalf of those people that I stood alongside labor groups and community groups like the New York Immigration Coalition, Make the Road, etc. To be applauded them for sacrificing their health and their well-being to keep our city running, etc., etc. When it came time to actually acknowledge that and reward them for quote-unquote keeping our city going, we didn't do that. And that's a damn shame. And I'm an immigrant. I'm uninsured right now, right? I'm unemployed. I had to leave my job in order to campaign full-time. That's how dedicated I am to this. And so it's just incredibly disheartening. We cannot recover if we don't center the recovery of working families. I personally, as a mother and as the only parent in my race, am tired of having to choose between providing for my child financially and tending to my child emotionally, and that guilt eats me up, that's inside, and it's not right. women bear the disproportionate burden of child care and caregiving. I know that I was a caregiver to my father in his last 2 years of life before he passed away. And I had to take time off of work, and that is a story that a lot of women understand. So in a nutshell, I want to see the New York Health Act. I want to see free health care. I want to see access to quality health insurance, and I want to see universal child care for every working family. And immigration status, and certainly employment status, should not be a disqualifier.
Thank you, May, and that's